We're transitioning now from the third unit of our course, the Age of Faith in Reason, to the fourth unit, what I'm calling the Age of Cynicism and Suspicion. This is a time period where the fallout, the after effects of the Enlightenment period and the more or less failed attempt to put Humpty Dumpty back together again begins to be felt. Remember, the modern period was marked initially with a great degree of optimism, a very positive conception of what the human being can come to know with certainty, with objectivity and so forth. It ends in a kind of startling way with a kind of precarious synthesis given by Kant, which comes with a particular price tag attached to it. That is, it comes with the price tag which says, no longer can we know objectively reality in itself. Instead, we ought to turn the gaze inward and think of the world as being partially constituted or constructed out of our own mental categories. Well, that was a kind of stopgap, but it didn't last for too long. More and more people begin to start to wonder where our beliefs really come from, given that there's so little about the world itself and even our own selves that we can know with certainty. And the whole notion of objective truth, what Thomas Nagel calls the view from nowhere, that marked the modern period. The notion that we could sort of rise above our historical conditions, our cultural formations and so forth, and see the world through the eyes of pure reason, see things objectively. This becomes seen as more and more naive, difficult to sustain. And in fact, it's in this period where you see philosophers and psychologists and political theorists begin to suspect that many of the beliefs that we postulate, the beliefs that we endorse, and the reasonings that we give, the arguments that we give in support of these beliefs, are all sort of just a show, right? They're sort of ex post facto rationalizations. We tell ourselves stories about why we believe certain things. We construct arguments for God, for the soul, for moral conclusions. But that series of reasoning, that set of arguments that we give when somebody asks us, why do you believe X? It's not the real reason we came to believe those. It's just a story we tell to make ourselves seem to ourselves and to others as though we're behaving in accordance with this kind of objective reason. Rather, there are sort of subconscious or even physiological processes that truly explain the origination, the genesis of our beliefs and our motivations and much of our conduct. And surprisingly, the idea that our own motivations, our own reasons are transparent to us, are accessible by us, becomes more and more naive in the eyes of these philosophers we'll be discussing. This time period, then, is a post-Enlightenment, post-modern time period. And to some extent, it's fair to say we're still within this time period. It's not as though there's a recognizable end to it. For the purposes of this course, we're going to study the philosophers who took up this orientation and pushed it to its limits in the 1800s. And then we'll move on to the contemporary period, the fifth unit of our course. But it's going to be evident that what is said and what is the philosophy that is produced and argued for during this time period still retains an amazing amount of influence on the way that we think now.